What a fucking movie. What a blast. This is awesome.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm just I'm just being very cautiously optimistic with everything, but this is it brings me great pleasure to hear you say that. Thank you.
And this is like John Wick on steroids. I mean, I could not believe, and nothing could prepare me for the experience that I had when watching this film. I mean, my wife and I were just watching, cracking the fuck up. It's a blast. And I normally don't go into interviews like praising like this, but like, I could not. It was not expected. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Okay. Well, I want to open my window, and now I want you to repeat that so everybody can be like, hey, everybody, come have a look. Scott, like this. I mean, thank you. It's look. As a filmmaker, you go and do something, you think it's kind of good, you like it, you think that's special enough, and you always want to do better and more, and then you get actual feedback from people who had no idea what to expect, and it works. So I'm very restrained, but I'm very happy. Thank you, Scott.
No
It's a
problem.
wonderful way to go into an interview, by the way. I mean, I'll probably mess up all my answers now because I'm, my ego is just, my head's big now, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I wanted to start this off with the obvious question. How did you get involved with the project?
I just got the script, and it said Bob is attached, written by Derek Kolstad. Have a look. And a year before that, I remember asking tell my agent that if I was to do an American movie, what I'd love to do, it'd be great to do a elevated action film with preferably a comedian who hasn't done action before in the action part. I mean, that'll be great. And if 8711 could do the stunts, that'll be fantastic. And this is right after Atomic Blonde, which is my favorite action sequence of 2017, that stairwell sequence.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best.
It really is the best. I mean, some of the guys that worked on that were in this movie, so I got to ask a lot of questions. I like fanboying out with all the people, but I got the script from my agent, and it said, "Ask and you shall receive." Bob Odenkirk in an action film, 8711 are producing, or it's 87 North now. But I remember reading it and going, "Yep, I understand what this film is about. I understand what's so special about it. I'd like to talk to Bob. I'm interested." And I got on the phone with Bob, and I think the reason I got this film was I saw something in the script that he and Derek were not really aware of. It was already a great draft, but I spoke to Bob. I said, "Bob, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like this film is about addiction. It's about a guy who squashed his addiction to violence or to action for a long time, and he's very unhappy because of it. And that's what makes this film special, because every other movie of this hitman coming back to his previous life, it's always about they did something to me. They stole someone from me. They killed something of mine. Nobody really stole shit. They stole $20. It doesn't matter. It's not what the movie's about. That is just the sort of it's a wink and a nod, I guess, but to the expected genre moves. But it really is about a guy who wants to get back to his previous self to become a happy person again. And he's an anti-hero. He really is. Everything that happens in the movie is because he makes the wrong choices. So his intentions are great, but his choices are not. And that's what makes the inner conflict is much more important to the story to me than the bad guys, the Russians with the shotguns that are coming in. And I think when I spoke to Bob about that, it just clicked for him. He's like, it really kind of is, now you mention it. And I think that made it, Bob, he saw my movie, he liked Hardcore Henry, but the question was, am I going to bring something story-centric important other than just, cool explosions and nice looking shots? And I think with that, my pitch, he kind of got that I really wanted to find something special.
I love the fact that the breaking point for his character is the fact that it's his daughter's bracelet. I mean, that's really where you just see him, he just loses it. And it's like his whole entire life changes because of that incident. You brought this up, and I'm glad you did. I want to talk to you about the stunts. I mean, I run a critics organization, and one of the awards that we do is we do best stunts. And I think this movie is going to be a shoo-in to be nominated next year because it's just perfect for it. How did you talk about working with the stunt team, and how did you film certain sequences? Like that bus scene is like amazing.
Thank you. Look, we had a great stunt team. Obviously, David Leach producing. He obviously knows a thing or two about stunts.
A little bit.
1,000 or two things. Remember, I'll tell you a little David Leach story. We're doing the Hummer crash before the bus scene, and we usually shot on 2 cameras, and this time we had 3. And I knew what the 2 shots were. I'm like, all right, where do we put the third one? We don't really need a third. Where do you put it? And Paul and I walking around trying to find something that's really unnecessary. At a certain point, and I see David just walking around. I'm like, David, excuse me, David, how many cars have you crashed in films? And he's like, 150, 200. I'm like, David, could you just please tell us where to put the fucking third camera? And he's like, over there. I'm like, great, thank you. It's Gregor Mentor was stunt coordinator, hugely experienced, really nice guy. And we just, again, all movies are made by people talking, just prepping and talking and looking at previous. Greg would go out and shoot with a bunch of cardboard boxes. He'd have a layout of the bus and he'd do a bunch of these beats. And we sit down and think, this is a little too much. It's over top. It's not violent enough. Let's do this. And it's a lot of discussions. And I knew what the character, my pitch for the character was, Hutch Mansell is a Wolverine, not the Wolverine, not Hugh Jackman, not the superhero, but he is the animal. He's that rough and unstoppable force. And that to me was when he gets back on the bus, that was to me the moment I said, this is the Wolverine. He's going to go in there. We want to do one take as he's cutting through everybody. One shot, rather. A couple of takes, one shot. And the wonderful thing with Bob training for a year and a half is that you could do whole sequences. Like the reason there's cuts in the bus is because the bus is so tight. We didn't want to do the split cut bus kind of old boy style, but it's just an unbelievable blessing to have the lead, Bob, be so over prepared. He was so adamant about doing this properly because he knows it's his one shot to get it right. He's going to be in a real good shape. He's going to practice the shit out of all the moves, and he's going to have a stunt team that are going to be devoted to getting the best thing possible. I remember one of the stunt guys in the bus. We're taking a pause, and it was lunch, and he goes up to me, he says, "Ilya, you should really value this moment." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I am already, but why? Why especially this one?" He says, "Because you're hardly ever going to work with people who care as much about this as Bob." And I was like, "That makes total sense. Thank you."
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that he was like really in it. And I just love the transitioning with his character. And it's interesting that he was already attached to the project before he came on board. Was Christopher Lloyd also attached?
We had 6 weeks of prep, and I arrived in Winnipeg, we only had Bob, and we had 6 weeks to make the film, prep the film, and get the cast. Bob, the reason Bob's attached to this was attached because it was Bob's idea to begin with. I'm not sure I should be telling his story, but I'll share sort of the highlights of it. He had his home broken into. He had a home invasion, and that obviously has some. It leaves a mark, and he kept thinking about this character. It's like, what would I be? Because he did the right thing. He called the cops. He locked the guy out in the basement. When the cops came, they were just very, what's not despondent, but they were kind of like, if it was me, I'd kick his ass. But you did the right thing.
Yeah.
So pretty much some of the lines in the film were very close to what Bob was retelling me in that story. I asked Derek to put some of those key lines in with the cops because that's exactly what pissed Bob off so much, because he did the right thing as you would do and I would do. But he was thinking, if I was a badass, how would I handle this differently? And then that whole dilemma came about, and that's the film. But with Lloyd, we had a list of people, and I remember we were about to start going out when Bob calls and says, "Guys, what about Christopher Lloyd?" And we were like, phone drop. Get Chris, let's try it. We got it perfect. It just, I printed his picture up and I put it on the wall next to Bob, next to RZA, and it just made total sense. RZA, Lloyd, Bob. It's so unexpected, but in the best possible way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's the surprise about the movie, is that when he pops up, I'm like sitting there, I'm like, whoa, like, and then when he starts becoming the badass, just like, his son, I mean, that took me to a whole nother level. I was like, wow, this is such perfect casting, and it's not expected casting. When you hear about like cliched casting, it's like, oh, he's the perfect choice. This one on paper, like you look at it like, really? But you made it work. You made it work.
I'd love to take full credit for it, but no. It's the wonderful thing was with Christopher Lloyd. We talked about it. I can tell you quickly my Chris Lloyd story before he flew out to Winnipeg. I had one conversation on the phone with him because obviously you don't audition him. He's going to be great. So we said, if he's into it, let's have him, and we'd be lucky to have him. And we get in the call, and I remember talking and I was saying, Mr. Lloyd, so we'd like to put a bunch of shotguns on you. We want David's character to have, a multitude. He doesn't want to reload, so instead he's going to have a bunch of shotguns at the ready. And they're heavy, so we'll make props, so make it light for you. So, we don't want to make it physically silly. And Christopher, this is heads up warning for a really shitty Christopher Lloyd impression, but he says, "Ilya, how in movies people have coffee cups and there's no coffee and the audience knows." I'm like, "Yes, sir, I do." He's like, "Well, let's not do that." So then, for most of the time he is carrying for very heavy shotguns, which is, I would occasionally put them on and walk around with him while we're, prepping for the next shot. Because every time he had a moment to just hang out with Chris Lillard, of course he'd take it. And I remember going like, this is not that comfortable, and I'm in pretty good shape, and I'm, 2.5 times younger than him. But that's Christopher Lloyd. He wanted to make it properly good, just like Bob and just like I. And it's wonderful to be blessed with partners who are in it to win it.
Oh man. Listen, Ilya, I gotta tell you, congratulations again. What a fun movie. I cannot wait to watch this. I think this is destined to be a cult classic. I think there's going to be a sequel. I hope you come back for the sequel. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you liking the movie and taking the time as well. Thank you.